somewhere far from the bright lights of success, in a quiet rural town where opportunity rarely visits and hope often feels like a luxury. A young girl sat alone on the cold floor of a small wooden home, holding the last photograph she had of her parents. She did not know that one day the world would speak her name in boardrooms, universities, and financial news headlines. She did not know that decades later, millions of people would study her decisions, her discipline, and the mindset that transformed her from invisible to influential. All she knew in that moment was silence, uncertainty, and the heavy realization that childhood had ended far too soon. She was 9 years old when everything changed, and the life she once knew disappeared without warning, leaving her in a reality that most adults would struggle to survive. And her name is Emily Carter, a name now associated with innovation, resilience, and extraordinary wealth. But her story did not begin with privilege, connections, or opportunity. It began in a place where children often left school early to help their families survive, where electricity was inconsistent and where ambition was often quietly replaced with acceptance. Emily did not grow up surrounded by mentors or wealthy relatives who could open doors. She grew up surrounded by limitations that quietly shaped the expectations of everyone around her. Many believed that people born in such conditions would simply continue the same cycle, generation after generation, never imagining a different future because no one around them had ever experienced one. When Emily lost both parents within a short period of time due to illness, she entered a chapter of life that no child should ever have to understand. Grief was not the only burden she carried. Suddenly, survival itself became a daily question. Relatives tried to help where they could, but resources were scarce for everyone, and difficult decisions had to be made. Some suggested she should focus on learning practical skills instead of continuing school. Others believed she should accept the reality that dreams were often reserved for those born into better circumstances. Conversations about her future rarely included words like success, opportunity, or achievement. Instead, they focused on stability, humility, and managing expectations in a world that did not always reward effort equally. Years later, financial analysts would attempt to explain her rise using charts, data, and strategic milestones. But numbers alone could never fully capture the psychological transformation that began during those early years. Because something quietly changed in the way Emily viewed the world. She began noticing patterns in human behavior, observing how some individuals were able to create value even when resources were limited. She listened carefully whenever teachers mentioned stories of entrepreneurs who started with very little, yet managed to solve problems that others ignored. She paid attention to how persistence often separated those who remained stuck from those who eventually moved forward. These small observations slowly formed a foundation that would later influence decisions worth millions, then billions. Emily did not suddenly become successful overnight. Her journey was shaped by years of rejection, small failures, and on moments when giving up seemed far more reasonable than continuing. She took small jobs that most people overlooked, saved small amounts that many considered insignificant, and spent late nights reading borrowed books that expanded her understanding of how businesses were built and why some ideas succeeded while others disappeared. She studied behavioral psychology, market trends, and decision-making patterns, often asking herself why certain products gained trust while others were ignored. She was not searching for shortcuts. She was searching for understanding because she believed that understanding created options, and options created freedom. Her early attempts at building income were modest, sometimes unsuccessful, and often discouraging. But each experience gave her insight that would later influence bigger strategies. She learned how to communicate value clearly, how to observe unmet needs, and how to remain patient when immediate results did not appear. She discovered that many successful individuals focus less on chasing money and more on solving meaningful problems consistently over time. That realization slowly changed the questions she asked herself each day. Instead of wondering how to escape her situation quickly, she began focusing on how she could become useful in ways that others were not yet considering. That shift in perspective marked the beginning of a long process that would eventually lead to opportunities few people could have predicted. Today, Emily Carter's companies operate across multiple industries, influencing technology adoption, consumer behavior, and investment strategies across international markets. Her story has been analyzed in business schools as an example of long-term thinking combined with disciplined execution. Interviews with colleagues often describe her as calm, observant, and highly intentional with decisions that carry significant consequences. Yet even as her financial success grew, those who knew her best often noticed that she rarely spoke about wealth itself as the primary goal. Instead, she spoke about independence, adaptability, and the importance of building systems that could continue creating value long after initial success was achieved. Her philosophy reflected lessons learned during years when uncertainty was not theoretical, but part of daily life. What makes Emily's story especially compelling is not only the scale of her achievements, but the psychological resilience developed during circumstances that could have easily limited her ambitions permanently. Many people experience difficulty, but not everyone transforms those experiences into strategic advantage. Emily's ability to remain focused through extended periods of slow progress demonstrates a pattern often observed among individuals who later achieve exceptional results. They tend to develop tolerance for delayed rewards, comfort with calculated risks, and willingness to learn continuously even when external validation is limited. These characteristics are rarely visible at the beginning of a journey, yet they often shape outcomes more than initial conditions. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The question many people continue asking is whether Emily's success was primarily the result of intelligence, timing, discipline, or the unique perspective formed through early hardship. Some analysts suggest that individuals who experience instability early in life sometimes develop heightened awareness of opportunity because they learn quickly that circumstances can change without warning. Others believe her success reflects consistent exposure to educational material that gradually expanded her understanding of economic systems, consumer behavior, and technological growth cycles. While opinions differ, one detail remains clear. The environment she began in did not determine the environment she ultimately created. Her story invites a deeper reflection about how individuals interpret limitations and whether perception itself can influence long-term outcomes. When people repeatedly hear that certain achievements are unrealistic, many adjust expectations accordingly, often without realizing how strongly environment can shape beliefs about possibility. Emily's journey challenges assumptions about how far determination, combined with strategic thinking, can extend beyond initial conditions. It raises questions about how many potential innovators remain undiscovered simply because their circumstances limit access to resources that encourage experimentation and long-term thinking. On understanding the full path that led Emily Carter from a small rural community to global financial influence requires examining the pivotal decisions made during periods when success was far from guaranteed. It requires observing how persistence interacts with opportunity, how preparation intersects with timing, and how individual mindset can shape responses to both progress and setbacks. Because hidden within her story are lessons that extend beyond business, touching on psychology, adaptability, and the complex relationship between environment and ambition. Emily Carter's rise to extraordinary wealth did not follow a straight line, nor did it unfold in a way that made sense to those observing from the outside. For years, her progress appeared slow, almost invisible, as if nothing significant was happening at all. Friends who once knew her during childhood described her as disciplined yet reserved, someone who spoke very little about future plans yet consistently demonstrated unusual patience when results did not come quickly. What many people failed to notice was that Emily was quietly studying patterns that most overlooked, observing how industries evolved, how consumer behavior shifted, and how certain decisions created ripple effects far beyond their original intention. While others searched for immediate breakthroughs, she focused on building knowledge that could compound over time, believing that small advantages repeated consistently could eventually produce results that appear dramatic only in hindsight. The deeper analysts examined her journey, the more questions emerged. How did someone with limited access to resources gain exposure to advanced financial thinking, usually associated with elite institutions? What motivated her to continue investing effort even when early outcomes offered little reassurance that her sacrifices would lead anywhere meaningful. And perhaps most intriguing, what internal framework allowed her to remain focused during periods when most individuals would naturally redirect their energy towards safer, more predictable paths? Her story reveals a sequence of calculated risks, moments of doubt, and decisions that required balancing practicality with vision, and often without external validation that those decisions were correct. Those who later worked alongside Emily frequently observed that she possessed an unusual tolerance for uncertainty, combined with a habit of analyzing problems from multiple perspectives before taking action. She approached challenges with the mindset that understanding human behavior was often as valuable as understanding financial data, recognizing that markets were influenced not only by numbers, but by emotion, perception, and timing. This perspective guided her through industries where competition was intense and where hesitation could result in missed opportunities that rarely returned a second time. While many narratives about wealth focus heavily on visible milestones, the foundation of Emily's success was built through decisions made quietly, when often long before measurable results appeared. Her turning point did not come from sudden luck or unexpected inheritance, but from gradually positioning herself in environments where learning accelerated and exposure to new ideas expanded her strategic thinking. She spent years observing how technology transformed traditional business models, how changing consumer expectations created space for innovation, and how individuals who remained adaptable often positioned themselves ahead of broader market movements. During this period, Emily developed a disciplined habit of documenting insights, refining ideas repeatedly, and testing assumptions carefully before committing significant resources. The patience required for such an approach often discouraged those seeking rapid outcomes. Yet it allowed her to minimize risk while increasing the probability of identifying opportunities aligned with long-term growth trends. As her knowledge deepened, Emily began noticing gaps in industries where existing solutions no longer satisfied evolving customer expectations. Rather than attempting to compete directly with established companies immediately, she focused on identifying overlooked needs that could be addressed efficiently using emerging tools and strategic partnerships. Her early projects were modest in scale, but significant in learning value, providing practical insight into how theory translated into real-world execution. Each experience refined her ability to evaluate potential investments, anticipate operational challenges, and adjust strategies without losing sight of broader objectives. While external observers occasionally questioned the pace of her progress, Emily recognized that sustainable growth often required extended preparation that remained invisible until results accumulated. Many biographies of influential entrepreneurs reveal that the period preceding visible success is often filled with experiments that fail quietly, providing lessons rarely shared publicly. Emily's journey reflects a similar pattern, where unsuccessful attempts were not interpreted as final outcomes, but as data points guiding future decisions. She developed the ability to detach emotionally from short-term results, focusing instead on extracting insight that could improve subsequent approaches. This mindset allowed her to maintain forward momentum even when progress appeared incremental, when reinforcing the belief that persistence combined with adaptation often produces advantages that are difficult to replicate quickly. The complexity of Emily Carter's transformation lies not only in the financial achievements that later defined her public image, but in the disciplined process that shaped the way she approached opportunity itself. Her story raises questions about how individuals can prepare for possibilities that do not yet exist, how strategic patience can influence long-term positioning, and how early hardship can strengthen the capacity to navigate uncertainty without losing direction. Understanding what happened next requires examining the environment where her first meaningful opportunity emerged, an opportunity that would test her ability to apply years of preparation under circumstances that offered both promise and significant risk. Long before financial publications analyzed her leadership style, Emily Carter was simply a quiet child who observed more than she spoke. Teachers from her early school years later recalled that she rarely asked for attention, yet her notebooks were filled with questions that went beyond classroom assignments. While other students focused on completing tasks required for grades, Emily appeared interested in understanding why certain ideas worked and how systems influenced everyday outcomes. She often remained after lessons ended, reviewing material repeatedly until she felt confident she could explain the concept clearly to someone else. This habit of deep processing became one of the earliest indicators that her thinking patterns differed from many around her, not because she possessed extraordinary advantages, but because she approached learning with persistence that gradually produced unusual clarity over time. Her parents, despite limited financial resources, encouraged curiosity whenever possible. They believed education represented a pathway that could expand options even when immediate circumstances remained challenging. Books were treated as valuable possessions, often shared carefully and protected from damage because replacing them was rarely easy. Emily learned early that access to knowledge was not guaranteed, which made her appreciate information in a way that later influenced her disciplined study habits. She did not view reading as obligation, but as opportunity, a chance to explore environments beyond the physical boundaries of her surroundings. Stories about innovators, scientists, and entrepreneurs became especially meaningful because they demonstrated how individuals could create change through persistence combined with practical insight. After losing her parents, Emily's daily structure changed dramatically. Responsibilities increased while emotional support became less consistent, requiring adjustments that many children would find overwhelming. Yet even during periods of instability, she maintained routines centered on learning whenever circumstances allowed. She borrowed educational materials, listened carefully when teachers explained concepts that could be applied beyond exams, and observed how small improvements in skill sometimes produced noticeable differences in confidence. Over time, these incremental gains began reinforcing her belief that progress was possible even when resources remained limited. While each small success strengthened motivation to continue investing effort despite uncertainty about when significant results might appear. As she entered adolescence, Emily became increasingly interested in understanding how businesses operated and why certain companies expanded successfully, while others struggled to remain competitive. She noticed that organizations able to adapt quickly often maintain relevance even when industries change rapidly due to technological advancement or shifting consumer expectations. She studied how innovation frequently emerged from individuals willing to challenge assumptions about how services should be delivered, particularly when new tools created opportunities to improve efficiency or accessibility. These observations gradually influenced the way she interpreted challenges within her own environment, encouraging her to consider how creative thinking could generate value, even when starting conditions were far from ideal. During this period, Emily supported herself through small forms of income that provided practical exposure to responsibility and resource management. She learned to track expenses carefully, prioritize essential needs, and allocate remaining funds toward materials that could expand her capabilities. While many peers pursued immediate comfort whenever possible, Emily consistently directed attention toward opportunities that could produce longer-term benefits, even when such choices required temporary sacrifice. This orientation toward delayed gratification has been documented in multiple psychological studies examining patterns associated with sustained achievement, suggesting that individuals who tolerate short-term discomfort often position themselves advantageously when future opportunities emerge. Although Emily did not frame her decisions in academic language at the time, her behavior reflected similar principles observed across research examining goal persistence and adaptive problem solving. Her exposure to economic concepts expanded gradually as she encountered educational resources, explaining how markets respond to supply, demand, and innovation cycles. She became fascinated by the idea that value creation often depended on understanding unmet needs rather than simply offering products identical to those already widely available. This perspective encouraged her to analyze everyday problems through a different lens, when asking whether inefficiencies existed that could be improved through thoughtful design or improved communication. She observed that even small adjustments in service delivery sometimes produced meaningful improvements in customer satisfaction, suggesting that opportunity often exists where attention has not yet been fully applied. Over time, this analytical approach strengthened her confidence that strategic thinking could compensate for limitations in starting capital, particularly when combined with consistent effort and willingness to learn continuously. As Emily's understanding matured, she recognized that many successful individuals emphasized adaptability as essential when navigating environments influenced by rapid technological change. She studied case examples demonstrating how companies that resisted change often experienced decline, while those willing to experiment frequently discovered new pathways for growth. These lessons reinforced her belief that flexibility could transform uncertainty into possibility when guided by careful observation and informed decision-making. By the time her first meaningful opportunity appeared, she had already developed a framework shaped by years of disciplined preparation, emotional resilience, and intellectual curiosity that would influence how she evaluated risk and recognized potential advantages within complex situations. Kindly let us know where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us thank you. Let us continue. The defining moment that reshaped Emily Carter's future did not arrive with warning, preparation, or gradual transition. It came quietly, altering the structure of her life in ways she could not fully comprehend at the time. Illness entered her household unexpectedly, first as concern, then as fear, and eventually as loss that permanently changed the direction of her childhood. Within a short period, the two people who had provided guidance, encouragement, and stability were gone, leaving behind unanswered questions and responsibilities far beyond what most children are prepared to manage. Grief has a way of slowing time, of creating moments that feel suspended between memory and reality. And for Emily, those early days were filled with uncertainty about where she would live, how she would continue school, and whether the future she once imagined still existed at all. Relatives and members of the community attempted to offer support within their own limitations. Yet the environment surrounding her was already shaped by economic difficulty that left little room for additional burden. Conversations often focused on practicality, emphasizing the importance of learning skills that could provide immediate stability rather than pursuing ambitions perceived as distant or unlikely. Suggestions were made with good intentions, reflecting concern that prolonged education might delay the ability to contribute financially in meaningful ways. Some believed that encouraging realistic expectations would protect her from disappointment, while others quietly hoped she would discover a path that balanced responsibility with personal growth. These discussions influenced how she interpreted the options available to her, shaping decisions that required balancing survival needs with the desire to continue learning despite obstacles that made such persistence increasingly difficult. Emily experienced moments when continuing education seemed uncertain, as financial constraints affected access to materials and time available for study. Yet even during these periods, she maintained a connection to learning that extended beyond formal classroom settings. She borrowed books when possible, listened carefully to explanations offered by teachers willing to provide additional guidance, and observed how knowledge could influence problem-solving in practical situations. Each effort required energy that could easily have been directed toward immediate comfort, yet she continued allocating attention toward developing understanding that might eventually expand her choices. This persistence did not eliminate hardship, but it allowed her to maintain momentum toward a future not yet clearly defined. Psychological research often highlights how early adversity can influence the development of coping mechanisms that shape long-term behavior patterns. Some individuals respond to instability by narrowing expectations, focusing primarily on reducing exposure to risk, while others gradually develop resilience that strengthens adaptability when navigating uncertain environments. Emily's experience appeared to encourage the latter response, reinforcing habits of reflection, patience, and strategic thinking that later became essential when evaluating complex opportunities. She began viewing challenges not only as barriers, but as information, data points that could reveal insights about how systems function under pressure. This perspective did not eliminate emotional difficulty, yet it allowed her to interpret circumstances in ways that supported continued effort, even when outcomes remained unpredictable. Years later, when analysts attempted to understand how she maintained focus through periods of extended uncertainty, many pointed to these early experiences as influential in shaping her tolerance for delayed results. Having navigated situations where immediate solutions were rarely available, Emily developed comfort with incremental progress that accumulated gradually. She learned to evaluate decisions based on potential long-term benefit rather than immediate approval, recognizing that meaningful change often requires sustained effort before results become visible. These lessons, formed during a period defined by loss, later influenced choices involving investment, innovation, and leadership within environments where patience frequently determines whether ideas reach full potential. The tragedy that altered her childhood also reshaped her relationship with time itself. She became increasingly aware that opportunities could appear and disappear quickly, motivating her to remain attentive to possibilities others might overlook. While many individuals interpret early hardship as limitation, Emily gradually reframed her experience as motivation to ensure that future circumstances would offer greater stability and independence. When this shift in interpretation did not occur instantly, but evolved through repeated exposure to challenges requiring thoughtful response rather than emotional reaction alone. By the time new opportunities emerged, her perspective had been shaped by years of adaptation that strengthened her ability to remain composed when confronting decisions carrying significant consequences. Understanding this chapter of Emily Carter's story reveals how experiences that initially appear purely negative can sometimes contribute to psychological frameworks supporting persistence beyond what external observers expect. The loss she endured did not determine her destiny, yet it influenced the mindset through which she evaluated each new possibility. As her journey progressed, these internal adjustments began guiding actions that gradually expanded her environment beyond the limitations present during her early years. What followed was a period defined by disciplined effort, small calculated risks, and decisions that would eventually position her within reach of opportunities capable of transforming not only her financial situation, but her influence across industries that rarely reward hesitation. Survival became Emily Carter's first responsibility, and during the years that followed, her daily routine was shaped by necessity rather than comfort. She accepted small jobs that required long hours, yet offered limited financial reward, understanding that consistency mattered more than immediate income. Each task, no matter how simple, became an opportunity to observe how people interacted with services, how trust was formed between buyer and seller, and how reliability often determined whether customers return. These experiences provided practical lessons rarely discussed in textbooks, revealing how attention to detail could influence perception and how small improvements in quality sometimes created advantages disproportionate to the effort required. While others viewed these early roles as temporary obligations, Emily treated them as informal training environments where observation and discipline gradually strengthened skills that would later influence far more significant decisions. Even during periods when fatigue made concentration difficult, she continued allocating time to learning, often studying late into the night using borrowed materials or freely available educational resources. She focused not only on academic subjects, but also on understanding how individuals identified opportunity within environments that appeared limited at first glance. She became increasingly interested in behavioral economics, decision theory, and case studies describing how entrepreneurs built sustainable organizations by addressing unmet needs. Rather than attempting to memorize isolated facts, Emily concentrated on recognizing patterns that repeated across industries, searching for principles that remained relevant even when technologies or market conditions evolved. This approach allowed her to develop flexible thinking, capable of adapting to new information without losing coherence in long-term strategy. Progress during this period was gradual and often invisible to those around her. Income remained modest, and measurable success appeared distant. Yet internally, she recognized incremental improvements accumulating quietly. She developed stronger communication skills, learned to evaluate trade-offs between competing priorities, and became more confident in her ability to analyze situations independently. Each challenge encountered along the way contributed additional insight, reinforcing the belief that persistence combined with reflection could gradually expand available options. Although uncertainty remained constant, she no longer interpreted it as indication that effort lacked value, instead viewing ambiguity as natural component of complex environments where meaningful results rarely appear immediately. Emily also became increasingly selective about how she spent both time and attention, recognizing that distractions could delay progress in ways difficult to detect day by day, yet significant when measured across years. She reduced activities that offered short-term comfort without contributing to development, replacing them with routines that strengthened focus and clarity. This discipline did not eliminate moments of doubt, but it created structure that supported consistent forward movement even when motivation fluctuated. Over time, this reliability distinguished her from peers who often changed direction frequently when faced with temporary difficulty. Stability in approach allowed her to refine skills more deeply, increasing competence in areas directly related to long-term objectives. As her understanding matured, Emily began exploring ways to apply theoretical concepts in practical contexts, testing small ideas that required minimal resources, yet offered valuable feedback about feasibility. Some attempts produced modest positive results, while others revealed flaws that required adjustment before further investment. Rather than interpreting these outcomes as indicators of success or failure alone, she analyzed them as information guiding future decisions. This analytical orientation allowed her to remain objective when evaluating performance, reducing emotional volatility that might otherwise interfere with strategic thinking. By documenting lessons learned and refining methods gradually, she created a feedback system capable of improving effectiveness over extended periods. During these struggle years, Emily Carter developed a reputation among those who interacted with her regularly as someone dependable, thoughtful, and unusually committed to continuous improvement. While financial transformation had not yet occurred, the internal framework supporting future growth was steadily strengthening. She began recognizing that meaningful breakthroughs often occur when preparation intersects with opportunity, a principle supported by research examining how sustained effort increases probability of recognizing advantageous circumstances when they arise. Without fully realizing how soon such an intersection would appear, she continued refining capabilities that positioned her to respond effectively when presented with challenges requiring both courage and careful judgment. By the time the next chapter of her journey began, Emily had cultivated habits of persistence, observation, and disciplined experimentation that differentiated her from many individuals facing similar starting conditions. These qualities would soon influence decisions involving greater risk, larger potential rewards, and consequences extending far beyond personal advancement. The years of struggle, often overlooked in simplified narratives about wealth, had quietly shaped the mindset necessary to evaluate opportunities not only for immediate benefit, but for their capacity to generate sustainable value, capable of expanding influence across multiple domains simultaneously. Kindly let us know where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us thank you. Let us continue. The moment that began shifting Emily Carter's trajectory did not appear dramatic to those around her. There were no headlines, no sudden recognition, and no immediate financial transformation that signaled something significant had begun. Instead, the change emerged through a realization that gradually reorganized how she interpreted opportunity itself. After years of observing how individuals exchange value through products and services, she recognized that the most sustainable income often flowed toward those who consistently solved meaningful problems rather than those who simply attempted to imitate existing solutions. This insight encouraged her to pay closer attention to inefficiencies within everyday systems, especially in areas where technology was beginning to influence how information moved and decisions were made. She noticed that as digital tools became more accessible, new possibilities emerged for individuals willing to adapt quickly and experiment with approaches that traditional organizations sometimes hesitated to explore. Emily began studying how online platforms expanded market access beyond geographic limitations, allowing small ventures to reach audiences previously available only to large companies with extensive resources. She examined case studies describing how early adoption of emerging technologies occasionally created advantages that compounded as user demand increased. These observations influenced her decision to focus on developing skills that aligned with trends shaping communication, commerce, and information distribution. Rather than attempting to master every available tool, she concentrated on understanding core principles that governed how value was perceived and how trust was established in environments where personal interaction was often replaced by digital experience. This strategic focus enabled her to allocate limited time efficiently while gradually increasing competence in areas capable of supporting scalable growth. Her first meaningful initiative began as a modest project designed to address a specific challenge she had personally experienced. Drawing from knowledge accumulated through years of study and observation, she developed a solution that simplified a process many individuals found unnecessarily complicated. Early feedback indicated that the idea offered practical benefit, though significant refinement remained necessary before broader adoption could occur. Emily approached this stage with patience, recognizing that initial versions rarely represent final outcomes. She gathered responses carefully, identifying patterns in user behavior that suggested which features created genuine value and which required adjustment. Each iteration improved functionality while strengthening her understanding of how small design decisions influence user satisfaction and long-term engagement. As interest in her project gradually expanded, she encountered opportunities to collaborate with individuals possessing complementary expertise, allowing the concept to evolve more rapidly than would have been possible alone. These partnerships provided exposure to perspectives shaped by different professional experiences, contributing insights that refined both technical execution and strategic direction. Emily remained attentive to maintaining clarity about core objectives, ensuring that growth did not compromise the principles that initially made the solution effective. This balance between openness to improvement and commitment to purpose became characteristic of her leadership style, influencing how future ventures would be structured and managed as scale increased. Financial progress during this phase remained measured, yet indicators of momentum began appearing more frequently. Revenue generated through early adoption allowed reinvestment into further development, gradually increasing capacity to enhance performance and reach additional users. Emily applied disciplined budgeting practices, prioritizing expenditures that strengthened long-term stability rather than short-term visibility. She remained aware that premature expansion without sufficient structural support often created vulnerabilities capable of undermining otherwise promising initiatives. By pacing growth deliberately, she increased the likelihood that each stage of development reinforced the next, creating continuity that reduced exposure to avoidable setbacks. The turning point in Emily Carter's journey was therefore not defined by a single event, but by a sequence of decisions grounded in preparation accumulated over many years. Her willingness to apply knowledge thoughtfully, combined with patience cultivated during earlier periods of uncertainty, enabled her to recognize opportunity where others perceived only incremental improvement. As adoption continued expanding and confidence in her approach strengthened, the foundation supporting future transformation became increasingly solid. What began as a focused solution addressing a specific need was gradually positioning her within networks capable of amplifying impact beyond what she had initially imagined possible. The next phase would test her ability to scale responsibly while maintaining the discipline that had guided her progress from the beginning, a challenge that would ultimately determine whether her efforts remained modest or evolved into influence measured on a global level. Kindly let us know in the comments section where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us thank you. The moment that began shifting Emily Carter's trajectory did not appear dramatic to those around her. There were no headlines, no sudden recognition, and no immediate financial transformation that signaled something significant had begun. Instead, the change emerged through a realization that gradually reorganized how she interpreted opportunity itself. After years of observing how individuals exchange value through products and services, she recognized that the most sustainable income often flowed toward those who consistently solved meaningful problems rather than those who simply attempted to imitate existing solutions. This insight encouraged her to pay closer attention to inefficiencies within everyday systems, especially in areas where technology was beginning to influence how information moved and decisions were made. She noticed that as digital tools became more accessible, new possibilities emerged for individuals willing to adapt quickly and experiment with approaches that traditional organizations sometimes hesitated to explore. Emily began studying how online platforms expanded market access beyond geographic limitations, allowing small ventures to reach audiences previously available only to large companies with extensive resources. She examined case studies describing how early adoption of emerging technologies occasionally created advantages that compounded as user demand increased. These observations influenced her decision to focus on developing skills that aligned with trends shaping communication, commerce, and information distribution. Rather than attempting to master every available tool, In other words, she concentrated on understanding core principles that governed how value was perceived and how trust was established in environments where personal interaction was often replaced by digital experience. This strategic focus enabled her to allocate limited time efficiently while gradually increasing competence in areas capable of supporting scalable growth. Her first meaningful initiative began as a modest project designed to address a specific challenge she had personally experienced. Drawing from knowledge accumulated through years of study and observation, she developed a solution that simplified a process many individuals found unnecessarily complicated. Early feedback indicated that the idea offered practical benefit, though significant refinement remained necessary before broader adoption could occur. Emily approached this stage with patience, recognizing that initial versions rarely represent final outcomes. She gathered responses carefully, identifying patterns in user behavior that suggested which features created genuine value and which required adjustment. Each iteration improved functionality while strengthening her understanding of how small design decisions influenced user satisfaction and long-term engagement. As interest in her project gradually expanded, she encountered opportunities to collaborate with individuals possessing complementary expertise, allowing the concept to evolve more rapidly than would have been possible alone. These partnerships provided exposure to perspectives shaped by different professional experiences, contributing insights that refined both technical execution and strategic direction. Emily remained attentive to maintaining clarity about core objectives, ensuring that growth did not compromise the principles that initially made the solution effective. This balance between openness to improvement and commitment to purpose became characteristic of her leadership style, influencing how future ventures would be structured and managed as scale increased. Financial progress during this phase remained measured, yet indicators of momentum began appearing more frequently. Revenue generated through early adoption allowed reinvestment into further development, gradually increasing capacity to enhance performance and reach additional users. Emily applied disciplined budgeting practices, prioritizing expenditures that strengthened long-term stability rather than short-term visibility. She remained aware that premature expansion without sufficient structural support often created vulnerabilities capable of undermining otherwise promising initiatives. By pacing growth deliberately, she increased the likelihood that each stage of development reinforced the next, creating continuity that reduced exposure to avoidable setbacks. The turning point in Emily Carter's journey was therefore not defined by a single event, but by a sequence of decisions grounded in preparation accumulated over many years. Her willingness to apply knowledge thoughtfully, combined with patience cultivated during earlier periods of uncertainty, enabled her to recognize opportunity where others perceived only incremental improvement. As adoption continued expanding and confidence in her approach strengthened, the foundation supporting future transformation became increasingly solid. What began as a focused solution addressing a specific need was gradually positioning her within networks capable of amplifying impact beyond what she had initially imagined possible. The next phase would test her ability to scale responsibly while maintaining the discipline that had guided her progress from the beginning, a challenge that would ultimately determine whether her efforts remained modest or evolved into influence measured on a global level. Despite extraordinary financial success, the most unexpected chapter of Emily Carter's story was not written in corporate reports or market valuations, but in the personal decisions she made once she had already achieved what many consider the ultimate definition of success. While public perception often assumes that wealth provides closure, Emily understood that financial achievement alone does not automatically create fulfillment. Years after her company reached multi-billion-dollar valuation levels, she quietly began dedicating significant resources toward initiatives designed to expand access to education, technology training, and mentorship opportunities for individuals growing up in environments similar to the ones she once knew. Her motivation was not driven by reputation management or public recognition, but by a belief that exposure to knowledge at the right moment can permanently alter how individuals interpret their potential. Analysts observing her philanthropic strategy noticed that she approached charitable investment with the same discipline that guided her business decisions. She focused on measurable impact, sustainability, and long-term empowerment rather than temporary assistance without structural support. Programs funded through her initiatives emphasize practical skill development, critical thinking, and adaptability, reflecting principles she considered essential for navigating economies influenced by rapid technological change. By aligning resources with frameworks designed to produce lasting opportunity, Emily demonstrated that the mindset responsible for generating financial value could also be applied toward expanding access to tools capable of improving economic mobility for others. This approach strengthened her belief that success achieves deeper significance when it contributes to systems capable of functioning independently beyond the presence of any single individual. The final dimension of her story reveals a perspective shaped not only by resilience, but by reflection on how early hardship influenced priorities that extended beyond personal advancement. Emily often explained that experiencing instability during childhood created heightened appreciation for environments where individuals feel secure enough to experiment, learn, and imagine futures not restricted by immediate limitation. She recognized that many talented individuals remain undiscovered simply because circumstances limit exposure to opportunities capable of revealing their potential. By directing attention toward expanding those opportunities, she sought to reduce barriers that prevent determination from translating into progress. Her actions illustrated that transformation can extend beyond personal trajectory, influencing ecosystems that enable broader participation in innovation and economic contribution. Emily Carter's journey challenges assumptions about the relationship between starting conditions and ultimate outcomes, reminding observers that circumstances influence probability but do not determine certainty. Her experience reflects patterns identified in research examining how persistence, strategic learning, and an adaptability interact to increase likelihood of identifying opportunities aligned with evolving societal needs. While each individual path remains unique, underlying principles often reveal common threads, connecting preparation with possibility. Emily's story demonstrates how disciplined effort sustained through periods of limited visibility can gradually produce results that appear remarkable only when viewed from a distance that compresses years of quiet progress into simplified narrative form. As her influence continues shaping industries and educational initiatives alike, the deeper message embedded within her experience extends beyond financial success. It highlights the importance of perspective when interpreting obstacles, the value of continuous learning when navigating uncertainty, and the impact that deliberate choices can produce when guided by clarity of purpose. The young girl who once faced circumstances defined by loss ultimately constructed systems capable of generating opportunity not only for herself, but for countless others whose potential might otherwise remain unrealized. Her story encourages reflection about how decisions made today may influence possibilities that remain invisible in the present, yet significant in the future. The question that remains is not simply how Emily Carter became a billionaire, but how many individuals possess untapped capacity waiting for the moment when preparation meets opportunity. Understanding this possibility invites viewers to consider whether limitations are always permanent, or whether persistence combined with thoughtful adaptation can gradually reshape outcomes that once appeared fixed. Her journey stands as a reminder that progress often begins quietly, developing through repeated commitment to improvement long before recognition appears. Do you believe determination alone can transform circumstance, or does opportunity play the greater role in shaping success? Share your perspective in the comments below, and if stories exploring resilience, psychology, and real-life transformation interest you, consider subscribing so you never miss future documentaries, revealing how ordinary beginnings sometimes lead to extraordinary outcomes. Kindly let us know in the comments section where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us thank you.